Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our Fall 2021 Family Education Night. We're happy to have you here, and we apologize for the technical difficulties. Hopefully everyone can see and hear us now. Although we're just about 5 weeks into the school year thus far, we can imagine that some of you, particularly those of you who are new to Montessori, may have already noticed a difference in how your children approach school and learning and the process of learning in general. The learning materials that your children enjoy today were created by Maria Montessori well over 100 years ago. Montessori was able to design the materials, curriculum, and overall educational philosophy after observing and coming to an understanding of how children learn best when given the opportunity. Through her observations, Montessori realized that children are drawn to materials that suit their developmental needs at that point in time. When given the freedom to choose the order of their activities within a structured environment, children move freely and excitedly from one activity to another. It is interesting to note that although child-sized furniture and objects are now ubiquitous in preschools and schools all over the world, Maria Montessori was the first to introduce those items into the classrooms to allow her students greater independence and freedom to explore. Through exploration with the materials Montessori created, the children gained not only important life skills and academic knowledge, but also increased independence, confidence, order, coordination, and concentration, among other things. Tonight, we will focus on 3 key concepts in Montessori philosophy. You will hear from the Hawk Meadow teachers at all program levels about what Maria Montessori meant when she encouraged teachers and families to follow the child. We also will share with you some background on what we mean when we talk about the prepared environment and self-correcting materials in Montessori education. Please note that there will be a question and answer period once we've heard from the teachers about how these 3 concepts are reflected in the different programs. Thank you again for coming, and please enjoy. Okay, we're going to just briefly introduce the teachers who are here tonight, and then we'll get started. So our first is our toddler teacher, Barbara Catavalis. And then we have Sylvia and Leslie from Primary B, Adriana and Celeste from Primary A, Goldie and Seema from Lower Elementary, and Eleni from Upper Elementary. So I believe that Barbara is going to get us started speaking about Follow the Child.
Yes, I'm going to speak about following the child. When Montessori educators say we follow the child, we're using a simplified term for a fairly complex and fundamental principle of life. We're following the children when we take time to get to know them, or when we sit and observe the child and we see what their natural tendencies are. We follow the child when we take the information that our observations supply us with and we use it to inform our practice. So we're getting to know some of the things that would interest them, things that they seem attracted to, also things that they're not interested in. We also follow the child when we meet the children where they are and support them through their upcoming steps in their social, emotional, and academic learning. We follow the child when we watch them, listen to them, and guide them in the right direction. Basically, we follow the child. When we follow the child, we observe what they're doing in a non-judgmental way, and we let our observations guide us. I'm now going to pass on to Celeste in primary, and she'll let you know how they handle follow the child.
Hello everyone, good evening. My name is Celeste Hoffland and I am the lead teacher in Primary A. Montessori teachers take into account where each child is at during a specific point in time, rather than imposing our idea of what the child should learn at that time. For instance, just because your child is 5 years old, they may not understand how to stand in line or raise their hand. Through careful observation, the teacher realizes this and gives implicit instructions on these skills so that it becomes second nature to the child. We provide the opportunities to learn, grow, and develop in a safe and nurturing environment. The environment is created with the child in mind, considering both his current development and his future needs. Note that even the chairs and the tables are age appropriate. We respect the child and his natural progression, honoring his spirit and independence. We follow the child by looking for what she is ready for and giving her exactly that. Follow the child means noticing what your child is drawn toward and finding a way to work that into your everyday life. Being patient when a baby is working on rolling over or sitting up and not hurrying her along to the next milestone. Being patient when she is developing hand-eye coordination or mastering a new skill. Being patient when an hour-long walk only takes you to the end of the block because she stops and watches every ant, bird, worm, and squirrel along the way. If your child is interested in ants, birds, and squirrels, you as the parent or the teacher can create meaningful connections that honor the light within your child and spark associations. So for instance, you could read a book about animals or draw pictures. You observe their actions and then make connections to the environment around them. We follow the child through observation. We give a child a new presentation because she's showing readiness through a natural progression of the activities, not because of some sort of prescribed lesson plan for the school year or because all 4-year-olds are doing that. So you should too. For you, follow the child means a trip to the park with climbing equipment when they've mastered walking and now want to climb everything. Leaving the party when the signs of tiredness emerge, rather than waiting for the meltdown, which makes both you, the parent, and the child feel uncomfortable. Letting the toddler feed herself, even if it ends up a bit more messy than if you had done it yourself. The next thing I'd like to share with you is a picture of a lesson that a student of mine did today in the classroom. It's not working. Maybe I can just share my phone.
One second.
Is it showing?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lesson of the Pink Tower, along with 4 other lessons. This lesson has the Monomial Cube, which is the white, yellow, and green pieces. It has the Binomial Cube, which contains 8 pieces. And it has the Trinomial Cube, which I believe contains 27 pieces. And then it also includes the geometric solid cube from our geometric solid lesson. So this child is a kindergartner and they have learned how to do each of those lessons separately, and they made the connection from the 4 lessons to the pink towers in relating that they are all cubes, and he wondered how they would all fit together. So then we
refresh it. Sorry. It just went.
So then we compared the different cubes to see where they would be placed on the pink tower lesson. And he, of course, was very proud of this realization and completion of the work. And he felt very fulfilled to be able to complete this.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to pass it on to Eleni, and she will talk about Follow the Child for elementary.
In the elementary classroom, to follow the child goes hand in hand with the term freedom within boundaries. Students in the elementary classroom are more than welcome to do independent research on a topic of interest. However, they do submit a formal plan for approval. The child must present to the teachers why they are interested in the topic, as well as questions they're looking to answer or facts they're looking to double check. They should have done some preliminary research and have made a timeline to show when they aim to have things accomplished by, to really show that they are committed to their work. Through observing and engaging in conversation with students in the classroom, teachers are able to gauge the interests of students and thus bring in materials, activities, or items that they feel students may be drawn to. We also love to encourage students to make materials of their own for the class based on their interests and research. So at the end of one of their independent studies, students can turn their research into materials to teach other students what they have learned. So those are just some of the ways that we follow the child in the elementary classroom.
Thank you. We'll return to Barbara, I believe.
Yes, we return to Barbara now to talk about the prepared environment. The prepared environment is another term that you hear in Montessori quite often. And I'm going to read you just right now a little quote from Maria Montessori. The first aim of the prepared environment is, as far as it is possible, to render the growing child independent of the adult. Maria Montessori. Put simply, this means that the child should have access to the right tools at the right time. As Maria Montessori explained, what is most characteristic in our system of education is the emphasis that is placed upon the environment. This can only be accomplished by understanding the child's developmental needs and offering materials or activities which meet their developmental needs. The role of the teacher in the environment is to observe each child's interests and his or her progress through the lessons. The teachers provide direction and/or assistance when needed to help the child connect with the learning materials. Based on this interaction, with the children, the teachers can swap out materials and introduce new ones. The lessons and learning materials in the prepared environment are set out on low, easily accessible shelves. In addition to child-sized height shelves, Montessori classrooms have child-sized furniture, fixtures, tools, and utensils. By keeping the environment child-sized and accessible, the Montessori classroom minimizes the child's need for adult assistance and maximizes the self-regulated activities. The Montessori environment is considered one of the greatest teachers of the child. If the adults prepare it sufficiently, children are able to work largely independently. When learning and independence are combined, children gain a sense of self that is very difficult to convey otherwise. There are 6 principles of the prepared environment, the Montessori prepared environment, and they are freedom, structure and order, beauty, nature and reality, social environment, and intellectual environment. And I'm going to pass it on to Sylvia from primary B, and she will explain those.
Yes, so there are 6 key components of a prepared environment. First is the freedom. And one of the main goals of Montessori prepared environment is freedom of choice. This is achieved through giving the child freedom for exploration, freedom of movement, to interact socially, and also freedom of interference from others. We believe that giving our little ones enough independence to choose their daily activities gives them a lot of power. And we are guides, not teachers. We keep a close watch on them and we correct the work wherever it's needed. That's why we always try to encourage all the parents to help us in that journey and starting with sending the child to school with easy to put shoes on, coats, and let's leave all the fancy clothes at home. Structure and order. The idea behind this principle is to reflect the structure and order of the universe, so the child can internalize the order of his surroundings and is able to begin making sense of the world around him. While structure and order seems counterintuitive to the freedom, nothing could be further from the truth. Structure and order in Montessori classroom accurately reflect the sense of structure and order of the universe. Maria Montessori believed that that age between 1 and 3 was a sensitive period to order. This is when the child begins to draw conclusion of the world around him. If there's not enough order to his environment, the child can sense the reason things can be off, since he will not be able to validate his findings. This doesn't mean that the order cannot change, but also if we make any changes in the classroom, we have to consider if this is in favor of the child. Beauty, and I think this is the most special key component as a teachers. We always try to search for new materials to the classroom. We're trying to make our classroom beautiful, inviting. We spend a lot of time in the classroom. Your children spend a lot of in the classroom, and we want them to feel like they are at home. The environment should be very organized and also decluttered, and very well maintained. We want to make sure that they know where to find pencil if they want to draw. They know where to find scissors. They want to find it. They know where to find glue. Maria Montessori believed that nature is a big inspiration to all of our children. That's why in Montessori class, we're trying to use only natural materials. We're trying to bring a lot of nature, a lot of plants, a lot of wood, cotton, bamboo. We're trying to avoid plastic and things that they are not natural to them. Yes. Also, all the materials, as Barbara mentioned, should be child size. If we are going to play, to work in the garden, they always work with the child size rakes. We don't give them the big size ones, mostly because we want them to success and not to fail. So that's how we help them. Montessori, one of the other components of the environment is social environment. And this is one of the most special for students, because that teach them a lot of empathy. Their classes are multi-age groups from 3 to 6, or 6, 9, 9, 12, and 18 months to 36. And this way we can make a real Casa de Bambini, and we can work as a family. But if we as a teachers, when we be able to complete and meet all those adult principles, another principle which is super important to us is the intellect. So we always changing the classroom according to the children. The classroom should be a living one and constantly improved. One of the quotes that hit me quite a lot when I was preparing that is: the environment must be a living one, directed by a higher intelligence, arranged by an adult who is prepared for this mission. And I think all the teachers of Hof Montessori are prepared for this mission. So.
So now you pass on to golden skull.
Okay.
So at the elementary level, the prepared environment looks a little different, but it's still the same kind of principles that we're following. When Maria Montessori started working with the Casa Bambini with the younger children, and when she started looking at this idea of educating children who are a little bit older, elementary age child, they came up with this idea of the cosmic curriculum, which she basically said, well, you can't possibly teach children every single thing there is to know in the world, but we can open the world up to them. We can give them an inroad into the world and help them find their way into what speaks to them. So at the elementary level, one of the things the prepared environment means is that we have to have enough variety and enough depth in what we have in our environment that children can choose things that speak to them. Obviously, they all need to learn to read and write and do basic math, but beyond that, one child might, can you follow me, do you think? Okay. One child might be very interested in animals and learning about animals. So we have a lot of things about animals, and we have a whole section of zoology in our classroom. Another child might get really interested in fossils and in ancient times, and they would be able to access that as well. And another child might be very interested in geography and maps and flags, and we would have that material. Whatever it is, if we don't have it and a child expresses an interest in it, typically Montessori teachers will get it or make it and get it there for the child, because we really want them to follow their path in life that is going to lead them on to success.
So yes, and really any of our classrooms, our goal when we are as teachers setting up our environment is to set up one in which a child can be as successful as possible with minimal adult intervention. So when we're planning out our classroom, we're keeping in mind how self-sufficient can the child be? Is everything laid out clearly? Are things going to be staying in the same spaces? Everything in the classroom has a specific spot, and we always try to reflect that we put things back where we found them. This sets up the next person to be able to find it very easily. It sets the next person up for success. On a larger scale, our classroom is broken down into different sections by subject. So there's a set of shelves for math materials specifically, most in the elementary classroom. In the primary classroom, you may see a set of shelves that has sensorial material on it. There will be a set of shelves specifically for geography and cultural studies, a set of shelves for language, and so on. And because of this layout in our classroom, even newcomers can come in and fairly easily find what they're looking for should be. So if they know, oh, I'm looking for something math related, there are 3 shelves for that purpose. And they don't have to go digging through the geography or the language material to find.
Okay. So, thank you, Eleni. Okay, now we're going to be talking about self-correcting work. Self-correcting work is really any work that has an ending to it. So things like Legos or building blocks are open-ended work. They are not self-correcting work. Okay. So self-correcting work is a work that can be completed by the child, and it sort of corrects the child on its own. Okay, I'm going to give you, I'm going to show you 2 examples of self-correcting work in the toddler room. This is one of them. That's why I'm bringing it along. Oh, well. Okay, this is a single piece puzzle. Actually, it's 3 pieces, but they're individual pieces. This is a work that the child would take out. It's a work that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if the child was seeing this for the first time and they came to try and put this together, let's say the pieces were mixed up a little bit. And they tried the circle in a spot it didn't fit, they could try another one without looking for help. Look at that. So one purpose of self-correcting material is to encourage children to identify on their own when they've completed an activity. Without needing confirmation from an educator, children are able to experiment and readjust until the task is completed to their satisfaction. This promotes problem solving and cognitive development. Implementing this sense of independence and responsibility at a young age will establish a foundation, a solid foundation for future growth and build strength and confidence. Some examples of self-correcting materials in the toddler room are puzzles, shape sorters, stacking rings, nesting cups, nesting dolls, matching cards. One more thing that we have in the toddler room are these water bottles. If you can see in the top, they're open. So when the child drinks, it's not like a sippy cup and it will spill. So this is an example of a self-correcting work. If the child drinks and pushes it back too far, it will spill on their face. And by the second time, they will regulate their behavior so that it just goes into their mouth. Okay, thank you. I'm going to pass you on to Leslie now for self-correcting work in the primary room. Oh, sure. Let me skip up.
So another quote that Maria Montessori has is one that actually she said she heard loud and clear from the children. And that quote is, "Help me do it alone." So with the brilliance of her built-in materials, that's what we get to do as Montessori teachers, is with the immediate feedback from these materials, the children, they use it, they see their mistake, they fix it without assistance, and they learn. And that kind of learning is in your bones. I mean, that kind of learning is something they take with them. And so, you know, we make mistakes. Nothing's really ever been invented without us making mistakes. And the beauty of the Montessori program is children are not afraid to take risks. They don't have maybe that what a lot of us might have learned at school is that we're being told, oh, you made a mistake and here's how you fix it. And what we try to do with the Montessori work is give them the time to do it over and over again until they succeed and perfect it, and they really feel that success. So the child is really controlling their own learning in that way. And, you know, we make suggestions, we give them the original example, and then they figure it out. So they become really independent and confident learners, which I know others have said. And self-discipline, they really gain self-esteem through that. And really to be a risk taker these days is a good, you know, quality to have. And also the ability to analyze and solve problems. That's what we really need for our future. And that's one of the most wonderful things they get out of a Montessori program. So I just wanted to show you a couple of examples. We have so many in the primary classroom. Let's see. This is our knot cylinders. And I'm actually not going to take up time, but you can imagine that if the child takes these out and then, you know, puts one here, and now this one's left over. Okay, oh, no, that's not going to work. So pretty quickly they're learning how to make it all fit and gaining the confidence with the work they completed. At the same time, they're learning about gradation, which is the beginnings of math. And they can visualize it, they can feel it, and they can do it. And I'll show you the famous binomial cube. That is a mystery to so many, but really the kids gain so much from this experience. We have the control of error with the colors and the arrangement, and it's actually a lot of fun too. So they use the lid as their control of error. They do some sorting with the colors. They're told to always start with the cube, the biggest cube, so they're gonna match the color. And red, they wanna look for red and black. So if we put it this way, instead of this way, and if I forget to match all the colors, it's not going to fit in the box. And what they really want to be able to do is put this box back together. So they'll fiddle a little bit until they match the red to the red, the black to the black. And that's going to fit. Start with the cube. Blue, black. And again, if they're in a hurry or they're just had enough, if they try to put this away like this, really want this to fit. Not gonna do it. So sometimes they're gonna be done, but the next time they take it out, they really want to get that lid on right. Match the colors. And that sense of accomplishment that Celeste was talking about earlier, that's the beginning. So it's great. They can do that as many times as they want without a teacher's involvement, and they get really a lot of learning from all the materials. So I'm going to pass on. Who's next? To me. Oh, you're Philip.
So as always, things look the same and different in the elementary level. And I'm going to show you two different examples. The first one, actually, let me put this down here so I have to- The first one is a self-correcting work, but at an elementary level. And this is from our skyscraper, which is one of our language works. It's on compound words. And what the student does to do this work is they find the card that's got nothing on this side, and that's their first word. And they find the card that has nothing on the other side, and that's their last word. Now, the challenge is to get from here to here and make words that make sense the whole way. So I would look at my cards and I'd say, oh, here's a gumdrop, that makes sense, and snowshoes, and school teacher. Now, then we have teardrop. And then we have several occurrences of the word board. You can see board is here, and board is here. So in order to figure out and make it go to the end the right way, they have to figure out which board goes with which word. So I've got barefoot, and then I've got dash, and it's going to be one of these boards, but we don't know which one yet. So if I go dash, and now I've got bear. Now what else could go with that? I'm gonna look at my cards and see what else can go with that. I might try bareback and barn. I know this is upside down for you now. Barnyard and surf. Now I've got, okay, board, and I may have done this the right way, so it is going to work. But if I didn't do it the right way, let's flip that around. Let's see. Instead of surf, we're going to switch it with what?
Dash.
Dash. Where's the dash?
It's there.
Okay, so if I put this one here, and then I've got hair, cut, popcorn, cardboard. Well, it's going to work this way too. I suppose I did bare yard instead.
There you go.
Okay, and then I would say, well, surfboard could work, but now I've got this extra card sticking out. So now I have to go back and figure out where I made my mistake. And what is this like? This is like how we all learn. If you think about it and you are learning how to bake a cake and you make the cake and it doesn't rise, you don't need anybody to tell you that your cake didn't rise. It didn't rise. So you're going to think to yourself, why didn't my cake rise? What did I do wrong? Let me try to change it around and do it differently the next time. And that's exactly what the self-correcting work does. It lets the child see, oh, there's a mistake here. I have to figure it out. I have to figure out how to fix this problem. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I want to show you another work. So this is a self-correcting work. We also at the elementary level have works that have controls for the child to check. So this particular work is on the animal kingdom. And what they do is they're going to take these other cards with the pictures, and I'm not going to do the whole thing, but match them up with these labels. So for example, I have where are they? My arthropods here.
Could you hold it up a little,
Yep,
Goldie? I'm
so here I
sorry.
have my arthropods. And I'm also going to find another card where arthropods fits in this little blank here. And that would be probably the last one. Yep. Okay, and that would be the blank has more species than any other animal group. They have an external skeleton, segmented body with pairs of jointed legs. And I'm gonna say, oh, that goes with arthropods. Now, when I'm done with all of my work, and usually we might start with just 3 or 4 of these at a time, I can look over here and find the picture that matches and see if I was right. So let's see, again on the bottom. Yep. So here's, oh, look, it says arthropods, it matches, that's correct. And then I'm gonna look for one of these cards. This time I looked at the bottom first. And is that the same thing? The arthropod has more species? Yes, it's the same thing. So this, I know this is correct now. And that's called my control of error. And these are on the shelf with this work so that the children, when they finish it, can check themselves and see if they got it right, if they didn't. Having to think through why not, what worked, what didn't work, has a greater level of learning than just having a paper graded and saying this is wrong, this is right. Just like when you're making your cake, and if somebody else came in and said, no, this is what you did wrong, it's not going to come out, you're not going to learn as much as by sitting there and trying to figure out what happened with the cake, why didn't it rise? So that's what I've got to say about this.
Thank you, Goldie.
Thank you.
I believe, Eleni, do you have something more? No? Okay. All right. So we are now finished with our presentations, and now we are open to questions from our esteemed family. So does anyone have any questions? Maybe just kind of call out if you have a question, because any families, parents, or anyone else have questions for us? Comments? Anyone out there? Okay, well, if anyone has any questions or comments for the teachers, or
I have a question. This is Erin. I might have missed it because I apologize. I was working and I joined 20 minutes late. But one of my questions is how, this is all very new to me, but one of my concerns is just like, how do you know that students are sort of keeping pace with where they should be relative to their peers? Like, how do you assess them, without using the typical sort of testing models that public school systems utilize?
is there anyone who wants to volunteer for that answer?
That's a primary question, is it?
I mean,
Primary?
it's primary or elementary, I would imagine, probably.
He's Finn and Derek.
Yes, yes. The question was how do we make sure they're at the right developmental level when we're doing this so independent? It's such an individualized curriculum and following the child.
So I can answer that. We look at to see where they are developmentally based on lots of different factors. So we take into account, where were they before even coming to school? What has their development been up to that point? And then that's kind of our starting off point as to where to go from there. At the beginning of the school year, it takes adjustment into the classroom. And so we allow kind of like a grace period at the beginning of the school year. I know every single classroom does that, where we're doing lots of observation, but we're holding off on necessarily coming to a conclusion right away because more observation is needed in the classroom. There's so many new factors for that child. And then just through careful examination. So I'll observe a child, and if I notice maybe they're forgetting to organize the numbers, they're able to do one-to-one correspondence. This is 5, this says 5, but maybe their numbers aren't in order from 1 to 10. So then I'll go back in with that child specifically maybe the next day, and I'll point out that specific key feature that I'm wanting them to be more observant of. And then I step back and I observe them and how they work with the lesson from there. And so it's a lot of trial and error just to see what method is going to work best for this child. Because just because they're not at the, quote unquote, like same point as everyone else, right? Because I know every parent does the comparison game, even though they don't want to necessarily, and they understand that every child is different. But through trial and error, we learn how your child learns best, and then we cater to them in that way. So Goldie was talking about maybe a teacher will even create a lesson to help them through that specific point that they're needing more guidance with. So it's just a lot of implementation of different strategies. And in a way, it's kind of like special education because we're catering specifically to that child. And so it's so individualized, each and every child's growth. And that's why we really don't look at it like they're not at the same point as that child, because they may have a better understanding in a certain area even than the other child, but the other child has better fine motor or something like that. So just because they're more or less in some areas, they, compensate in other ways.
And also what I think the most important for
That
us
was a lot,
is where
sorry.
they are, but we are focusing on the progress of each child. So it's like a clean card for us when they come and we see if they are making a progress. I was actually, for the last week, I was starting to work with a child, and she couldn't grasp it. And I modified this a little bit. I just showed it to her in a different way that is in our album, and she got it. So for her, she needed a little bit different lesson, different presentation to grasp the concept.
So it really is more about, the process rather than the product. So we work with them to kind of get through the mud to the point that they need to be at. But it's all about how do we get through the mud? That's the important part, not that they wrote 6 or that, that they did the art lesson like everyone else, right? It's catering to their needs.
We also almost have different works and different lessons for the same kind of topic. Yes, for the same concept. So if something is not working for one child because of the way it was presented, we can try a different lesson. So oftentimes, at least in the elementary classroom, there may be 3 children working on 3 different math materials, but really they're all working towards the same concept, but just in different ways because that's what suits them best. And that's how they work with it best, based on our observations.
I think, Leslie, did you have something else now?
I was just gonna say one thing that, studies of Montessori children find that they do extremely above average in a lot of areas, and either equal to or above average. So they find their own way. We follow them there, but and specifically math, I just always like to mention because it's such a fantastic program and they really excel. And some of our children that don't stay, we want them to stay with us. But if they have to move on and go to public school, we hear from their parents over and over again that, I don't want to say they're bored, but they're like beyond.
So I have a comment to add to what Leslie just said. I went to Montessori school through 5th grade in Chicago, and then I moved to New York for 6th grade. And we looked into Montessori schools, but at the time it was kind of only 1 year I would have been able to be at a Montessori school. This was years and years ago. And so I went to public school, and in math, they were learning fractions. They were just starting to learn about fractions. And I was in so much disbelief that the sixth graders were just learning fractions when I had been first introduced to them in primary class, in my primary class, but then, you know, really in first grade, because it's so hands-on, it just makes so much sense for the child to understand these really difficult and complicated concepts. And for example, in primary, you do addition, and they're practicing addition so much that they start to say, oh, what's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2? Oh, well, that's multiplication they're doing, right? And without the big word, you introduce those, and yes, you say it's multiplication, but it's just so hands-on that they really can grasp these concepts. And you can see exactly when the child is ready for that next step. And then it comes full circle to them because they say, wow, hey, that's just like when we did addition here. And then they start doing it with their friends and grouping. And it's just such an amazing experience to witness. And because it's a mixed age grouping, they're able to learn from each other. And they ask them, how did you figure that out? And then the 5-year-old's explaining it to the 3-year-old. And it's just such a really neat experience, and I'm grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you. I think, how did you have a question? I think I saw a hand up from Leonardo's mom. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. But I think Noah was before me.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, Monique, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just, I wanted to help, or I wanted to add to the answer about how do you know your child's, kind of at the same place with their peers. And I struggled with this when Noah was in primary, and I had to be reminded often by his wonderful teachers, because I thought, how could he possibly get through all these materials and have him naturally gravitate towards them? And he successfully gravitated towards everything over that 3-year span. And now that he's in his 2nd year in elementary, I see his interest shift. And I have that self-confidence, or that same confidence that I did before, that by the time he leaves lower elementary, he would have gone through all the materials. And so I have to constantly remind myself that I can't check off every one of the boxes of what I think he needs to have done this year, because those boxes were either checked last year or they're going to be checked next year. But by the time he leaves lower elementary, I know he would have gone through every piece of material in the classroom. And hopefully he puts it back too.
Thank you, Monique.
You're welcome.
That's helpful. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. How?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you. I just have a question. So practically in each classroom, there are children of different age. And I'm just wondering if a younger child becomes interested in something that that's designated for an older child, how would you approach that kind of interest? Would you encourage that child to risk, to even move out his or her comfort zone, or you would say, okay, wait until you grow a little older? I suppose that there is reason to both approaches, and I'm just interested in knowing what's your approach, and if you could explain either way that you have adopted.
Lenny's gonna take that one.
Well, I know in the elementary classroom, something that we do if a child may not particularly be ready for a lesson, but they are showing interest in it, is lay out the steps to be able to have that lesson. So if they're interested in a division material that also requires them to be at a certain level of abstraction in multiplication, then we can talk through that and say, okay, well, here's where you are, and here's some things that you need to be comfortable with and confident in before you get this next lesson. And here's what you can do to do that. And a lot of times it inspires them to either work harder or focus more diligently on a material because they have set that goal for themselves that either maybe they want to be able to get that lesson by the end of the month or the end of the school year or whatever it may be. But it is definitely an encouragement most of the time for them to really try to get those steps completed so that they can get onto that lesson that they want to be on. And then I definitely think it's one of the benefits of having multiple age groups is that they're seeing other people do things that maybe they haven't had a lesson on and aren't quite ready for, but they want to get there, and it helps them set goals for themselves.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I think in addition to that, that's an example that I see all the time. If it's a topic that they're interested in, rather than a material, like for example, we usually cover whatever in third year or fourth year. We can introduce them to the topic on a level that'll work for them at that point, or they can observe a lesson that's being given to an older child. So they're not actually getting a lesson, but they're getting like an appetizer.
Or an older child may do the lesson and the younger child may help them with certain components of the lesson. Maybe they're helping them to carry the lesson to the mat. So they're involved with the lesson in some way, even if it's not doing the lesson, right? Or the teacher might have the child bring the lesson to the mat, and I want you to sort all the materials by color or by size. So it may have actually nothing to do with the actual lesson. They're still getting that hands-on experience that they're craving, because if you deny them, they're still gonna go up to it and touch it and play with it and, try to manipulate. So it's better to work with the child to come up with a way for them to be engaged with that lesson, because you don't want to stop their curiosity. You want them to ask you, can you show me this? I'm interested in this. You want them to constantly be telling you, I want more.
That's great. Thank you.
There is one more scenario, and that is that sometimes a younger child is ready and does progress through the work so that they are doing work that is sometimes considered a third year work. And that is, okay, we just go along with, as they progress through the work, they'll get the next lesson, So sometimes it happens that they are working with materials that are not considered first year or second year materials.
And they feel very proud to be doing those lessons with the other kindergartners, to know that they are capable, and the other, some of the children will say to them, you can't take that out. You don't know how. And they say, yes, I do. I can do it all by myself. And it's like, such a, powerful thing to feel and be able to have so much confidence in your abilities. That's a wonderful feeling. And that's what we strive for every day in our classrooms, that the empowerment coming from within, that they can do it and they can do hard things. And we don't say, I can't do it. We say, we can't do it yet, but we're practicing. And so that's very motivating.
Thank you.
And I would just add one thing too, maybe, is that most of the materials can be used in different ways, right, by different ages, and then there are extensions and modifications. So there is one way it's used, when they first are introduced, and then ways that it can be extended. I also wanted to mention, since I'm reading the chat and you all aren't, that Erin McLaughlin said, thank you so much, this is very helpful. It's difficult to grasp at home when all my kids are willing to share as we played Power Rangers. And Ramon said Power Rangers and unicorns. So I think this might be a good time to talk about, maybe do you teachers have any advice for parents on questions they can ask that might help, kind of stimulate the conversation beyond Power Rangers and unicorns?
I would ask more specific questions. So questions such as, who did you sit with at lunch today? Or what was your favorite thing that you ate for lunch? Or what was the weather like when you went outside? very specific things that they can kind of think about. Because if you ask them, how was your day? It's like when someone asks you, how was your day? At the end of the day, and you go, it was good, or it was fine, or oh, it was a long day, right? You don't want to talk about it because it's so much to try and think about, especially for them when they have trouble, you know, just understanding time and, you know, the time of the day and things like that. So you can ask them specifically, like, what was one lesson that you did in the morning when you came to school? Did you do any numbers? Or did you do an art lesson today? And I know that you'll see that in our class on Fridays, they bring finished work home. So that's a really good thing for you to try to pay attention to what kind of work they're bringing home. And then you can kind of ask them, did you do cutting today? Or did you do push pinning? Or did you practice writing your name? Those kinds of specific questions will help kind of spark them remembering a part of their day a little easier.
But also we have great albums and show the pictures. So
Oh,
you can
that's a great
always
idea.
ask them, what did you do here? And so they will be very happy to share all the work they did. Like as you
Yeah,
as
the monthly newsletters, looking at those pictures with your children is so valuable. And I've spoken to the children about having a conversation with their parents about what were they doing, where were they, who is that? What was their favorite part of that activity? What did they use to build with it?
And I've noticed the parents, the kids are very excited about looking at the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
So they
Right,
super
to make
happy.
that connection between school and home and, you know.
Because in Montessori, we don't really have much paperwork sent home on our level, more like the elementary.
Not much
No,
on our
no.
level.
So that's why we try to document a lot of things with that for you.
Okay. Did anyone else in the audience have questions? I haven't been able to check for hands up. So if you have a question, just shout. Oh, Anna Holder has a question.
Hi, everybody. It wasn't a question, but just to piggyback off of that, what works, so Hudson's in upper elementary, I guess like fourth grade this year. So this year and last year, what works really well is we do like roses and thorns. So I just say like, hey, like what was the best part of your day today? Like what was the most awesome thing that happened? And then like, hey, what was like not so great? Like what didn't you like about your day? And that kind of forces a little bit more introspection and you can tease out a little bit more. And then I've also found like if you just kind of pick up your kiddo and don't say anything, but once you get home and like maybe they're eating dinner or you're watching TV, I find that they start to be a lot more open and talking about like who said what, who did what they played. And so like kind of not just jumping right on that subject as soon as they get in the car, as soon as you get home, and giving it an hour or two, you tend to get a lot more information.
Mhm.
You know, just kind of passively, like as I said, you know, you could be like, oh, hey, you know, why don't you help me load the dishwasher? And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, so-and-so, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then you get kind of the real story. So that's just my experience last year and this year so far. That's worked really well for us.
Thank you, Anna. That's great. Great feedback. Thank you. That's good. Anyone else on our panel or in the audience that has, you know, any other comments or questions? No? Well, we really hope this was, you know, helpful to all of you, and you know, whether you're.
I think Ellen is raising her hand, but Ellen, you're muted. Ellen, you're muted. Okay, there you go.
Sorry. I was just going to say, are you planning to do classroom observations for parents this year?
Yes, yes, we are.
I would encourage parents to, you know, attend a classroom observation, pay attention to what's happening, not only with your own child, but with other kids in the room. I find that's a great way to just absorb information about what they're doing. And then we do have conferences with the teachers where they do provide, you know, you with an output report of what your child has been doing. So there is, you know, real feedback that comes from the teachers. And I think you'll be really amazed with the progress that your kids make in the first half of the year.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for mentioning all those things. Very important. So absolutely, we will have observations, conferences, and so yes, but and you know, the newsletters and things like that. But please, you know, you're always welcome to also email teachers with any you know, questions, concerns. That's what you're gonna say. Okay, sorry, go. That's great.
You're not disturbing us. We like to hear from you.
You know, every Tuesday we have music, so that would be a good Tuesday question to ask your child. What songs did you do in music? Or what did you use to help you move today? They use scarves, they use bean bags. So asking them questions like that, and then they will be very eager to share that kind of information with you. Maybe they'll demonstrate it for you as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm very excited because I get to see the children, but the teachers can't see you all, but we say hello to all the children that are coming on now. It's so nice to see parents and children and we have some grandparents on the call. And so we're really excited to see you all. And we can't wait to see you children tomorrow. And thank you to the teachers for your time. And we hope this was helpful and informative, and we look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow morning. So thank you again.